Does anyone else love that Nickelback meme? No, just me. In all seriousness though, this graph will change the way you invest in property forever. And luckily for you, I'm going to break it all down in today's video. I will talk around the background behind the 18-year property cycle and its creator Fred Harrison. Then look at some of the fundamental economics behind the cycle, along with breaking down each of the different phases within it. Then I'm going to talk about where we are in the cycle. And finally, and most importantly, how we can use it as property investors to help us, which will be at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around for that. Hello people, I'm Jim. Welcome to the channel. I'm a property investor who's documenting my journey to financial freedom from my day job. I'll be breaking down everything to do with property investing, investing in general, and getting a better grip on your personal finances. So if you're like me and want to grow your wealth, then please do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on so you know when I post new videos. Before I start, I must state that nothing in this video is financial advice, and you need to make sure you do all of your own research before you invest into anything. So what is the 18-year property cycle and who coined it? Certainly in recent times, it was made famous by a chap called Fred Harrison, who's an author, economic commentator and corporate policy advisor, who is best known for his stances on land reform in particular, with there being four main phases in the cycle. Phase 1, the recovery, Phase 2, the mid-cycle dip, Phase 3, the boom, and finally the last phase, which is the recession. Now our mate Fred was predicting the 2007/8 financial crash as early as the late 1990s, with him being quoted as saying, "When Tony Blair and Gordon Brown entered Downing Street in 1997, I wrote to them and others, including Alistair Campbell, to explain they had 10 years in which to prevent the house prices peaking in 2007. In fact, in 2005, he published a book called Boom Bust: House Prices, Banking and the Depression of 2010, which successfully forecasted the 2007 peak in house prices and the ensuing depression. Fred, if you're watching lad, can you give me a forecast for the 6 numbers for Saturday night? Tar mate." Fred Harrison has come to his theory by mapping the 18-year cycle across hundreds of years worth of data. He explained, back in the 1930s, an 18-year business cycle was identified for trends in the city of Chicago. It rests on a theory about the land market, which operated on a 14-year cycle. I checked the theory against US-wide evidence from the 19th century and cross-checked the theory against the diverse and cultural geographic evidence from Japan and Australia across the 20th century. And I identified the cycle as operating within the UK for at least 300 years. Now of course the cycle is not an exact timeline giving you dates and time when stuff is going to happen, but it is cyclical, which simply means when something occurs in cycles, much like the 18-year property cycle. So why are property prices this way? Well, it comes down to some fundamental economics around supply and demand. Generally, there is a finite amount of land, even more so in somewhere like the UK, which is not like any other commodity. If you want more coffee, you can plant more coffee in the ground and grow it, but you cannot easily magic up new land. So as the economy gets bigger, businesses and people look to expand. So this might be a business getting a larger premises, or a family wanting a larger house, which is something we've seen a lot of over the last 18 months. Or finally, there might just be more people knocking around, as everyone's having a ball and having loads of babies. So all of this creates more demand for land, which puts pressure on the price of land to go one way, which is up. But like we said earlier, we cannot create more land, and in lots of places in the UK we cannot build on them as they're protected areas, which means the stock gets even smaller. Hopefully it's easy for you to see why the price for land goes up when there's more demand. But then, what tends to happen, and this is something lots of people point out when they talk about how unaffordable property is the price of property, or the land it's built on, rises faster than people's income, which in turn will make investing into land more attractive to some people, as there is only a certain amount of stock of it. And while all of this is going on, banks want to start making some more money out of the situation, so will happily lend against the value of the land or property. And of course, the more this happens, the more banks will increase the amount they lend to people, as there is normally a massive appetite for it at this time. This then carries on, and people are paying more and more as a percentage of their income for their properties. And they soon come to the conclusion that it's getting too much, and this is when a crash happens. So these are some of the economic fundamentals which lead to the cyclical nature of the property market. Now let's jump into the 4 main phases of the property cycle and talk through each one. So the first phase is known as the recovery phase, which generally will last around 7 years. Now over this period we'll have slow growth in property prices just after the crash which has come directly before it. You might get prices bottoming out as we enter this phase, and some people who are not experienced or do not understand this video or are not subscribed to the channel will be looking to sell their properties during this phase. This is a schoolboy mistake. Do not do this. In fact, you should be doing the opposite now. You want to be hoovering up all the best property deals out there, but you may come up against a stumbling block, which is getting lending from banks. They tend to not be as open to lending just after a crash, so you might have to jump through some more hoops here, or possibly have a higher loan to value. But if you can navigate this, you'll get some great deals. You'll get some of the best yielding deals around, which just sounds lovely to me. It sounds easy to do, but it will take some bravery to do it, as most people at this point will be telling you not to invest into property.
It's a bad idea at the moment, prices are too low.
But it in fact is the best time to do it, and you need to crack on and think about the long term. As we enter the end of this period, you might get some confidence returning to the market, as people will look at the others who were brave enough to invest and see them getting high yields, which will mean other people will start investing in property again. Finally, towards the end of this, you will start to see growth to happen in economic centres and slowly ripple out. Now these will be large capital cities and areas with lots of industry in them. So over this period of the recovery phase, you'll get steady growth. Nothing like the crazy numbers we've seen in 2020 and 2021. A few percent a year will be the normal at this period of time. The next phase is the mid-cycle dip. Now this is where property prices take a small dip. Now at this stage, confidence is still generally pretty fragile, and it does not take much for the dip to happen. And this can come in the form of early investors taking profits near the end of the recovery phase. Now the crash is still casting a long shadow at this point, so even though it is a small dip, people can start to think the world is ending again and we're going into another crash. But this is not going to happen. The exact opposite is going to happen. We're about to enter a boom phase. Now, if you want to be a massive legend, then please consider hitting the subscribe button on my channel. It will help me out loads and get me a step closer to becoming monetized and reaching my goal of being a YouTuber with a Tesla. So help a brother out and do that now. Next up, the big boom. Phase 3, the boom period. In fact, I've made a detailed video about how to spot a property boom in 2022, which I'll link at the end of this one. And I break down the 8 things to look for, so please make sure you check that out after this. But when we start to enter this stage, it is not strange to see double-digit growth in property prices. This creates a sense that everyone is feeling rich, which will lead to new huge building projects in big cities. The Shard in London might be a good example of this. Property prices will be all over the news. You'll see articles about how much money you have made by owning a house. You'll get regular updates about how much house prices have risen in your area, and everyone will be property mad, which means that the banks will want to make money. So they will start to offer even more products and relax their lending criteria. This is where, if you do not understand this cycle, you can start to get caught out, because you might be tempted to think that property prices will carry on going up and up forever, and this is the right time to buy. Normally this happens in the last 2 years of the boom period, often known as the winner's curse. This is where the cycle is at or near its peak, and all the amateur investors will pile into the market. They've seen some really strong growth before them and think this is the time it's going to carry on forever. But this is the worst time to buy. You might be stuck with a property for several years that will never reach the value you paid for it, which can be a tough pill to swallow. Which leads us on to the final stage of the cycle, which is the recession phase. Now, to understand about the winner's curse period, it is all based around confidence in the market. People will pay over the odds for anything, as they think the market is strong and will carry on going up. So their investments are not based on anything logical, just blind confidence in the market. Then suddenly, people wonder why have I just paid £250,000 for a shoebox which is not furnished and has no bills included. And then the market tanks fast. Prices will drop everywhere, meaning that investors and people who are over leveraged and cannot afford these properties they purchased will end up going bankrupt. Which in turn means that banks will have to take massive losses as the price plummets and people can no longer afford to pay their mortgages. Before 2008, you could get a 125% mortgage, which is crazy. So as soon as the prices dropped, it's easy to see how people and banks became unstuck. Of course, while all this is going on, what does the news do? Tell everyone to calm down and practice sound financial approaches. No, that doesn't happen. They whip up mass hysteria and talk about how much stuff has gone down and how the world is ending. Nothing sells like bad news. Although at this stage it feels like the sun will never shine again, there is something really important to remember, and if you do not take anything else away from this video apart from this, I will be happy. Every single cycle starts higher than the baseline of the last one, so the dip will be higher than the starting point of the last cycle, which shows the long-term trend of going up, and if you buy at the right time, you can ride out these dips. Then we are back to the recovery phase, and we get to do it all again, and the cycle starts to repeat itself. So the important question, where are we in the cycle now? Well, if our mate Fred is correct, we are right at the beginning of the boom phase of the cycle, with him pointing to the mid-cycle wobble being in 2019, when average house prices increased only by 0.6% in the year to August 2019. And this was based on data from the Office for National Statistics. Which means for us investors, property prices are not going down anytime soon, even after the massive growth we have seen during the last 2 years. Which raises an interesting point about the pandemic and what impact this has had on the 18-year property cycle. Harrison himself said he had to consider whether the pandemic might end up delaying the boom phase of this cycle, stating the evidence reinforced my view that the virus did not have the power to stall the cycle. I concluded that the 2020s would be a rerun of the years after the flu pandemic of 1918, which terminated with the crash of 1929. There might be a short-term easing off as the post-pandemic world returns to something akin to normal, but the price trend will continue upwards. So if we're at the start of the boom phase, when does this mean that the next crash will happen? Well, according to the 18-year property cycle, we would be looking around about 2026, with Harrison explaining, the overall trend from here is up and up, squeezing people's purchasing power till the music stops in 2026. House prices will peak in 2026, followed by a recession that will eclipse what happened in 2008. With Harrison saying that when prices become insupportable, with disposable incomes crushed by mortgage liabilities, people react on consumption. As the housing market freezes, enterprises find the demand for their goods and services beginning to disappear. And hey presto, we have a recession. And this is the exact economic fundamentals we spoke about at the start of the video, and it's why the property market is cyclical. So, what does this mean for us as investors? Well, we can start timing purchases in a more strategic way. Being honest, there are lots of good times to buy during the cycle, but there are certainly times to avoid buying, and that's in the winner's curse phase for sure. This is when everyone is talking about property, telling you how to make loads of money from it, despite the fact that most people are overpaying for deals. Do not be bullish during this period, as we know what follows, which is a massive drop in property prices. But this does offer you a good opportunity. This is the perfect time to sell. The market is hot and it's the perfect time to cash in on some of your properties in your portfolio. Generally, if lots of people are buying, it's a good time to sell, and vice versa. This is when you need to be listening to what the media is saying and almost certainly do the opposite to what they say. You can also identify good times to have lots of cash on hand. For example, using the winner's curse period to stockpile money ready for the recession is the perfect way to time the market. Personally, this is what I'm looking to do. Although property prices have been mental over the last 2 years, I understand the cycle we are in. And given the fact we're at the start of the boom phase, I know the market has a lot more room for growth. So now is not actually the worst time to buy. But I will be following everything closely. So I understand when we're entering the winner's curse phase, which should be around about 2024 to 2025. So if you guys want to stay up to date with everything relating to property, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to connect with me directly, check me out on Instagram at Jim_Holland182. And if you want to know how to spot a property boom in 2022, check out this video now. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.